Welcome back to Coffee, Conversation, and Baby Bunnies. As you can tell, I did not bring the last two little baby bunnies out to the alfalfa farm this morning. I just couldn't bring myself to do it, not on my birthday. So, I'm probably going to take them out tomorrow. I say probably because, my heart is softening by the minute, but they really do need to go out. So yes, we have them for one more day. They are getting very, very big. It's time for them to go. I'm just such a sucker for a little baby bunny. I really am. You're so cute. Audie has enjoyed this because he knows the bunnies are still here. And I think he's starting to get his hopes up. The longer they stay, the more convinced he is that these are going to be his little pet bunnies. And they're not. But they are doing extremely well. Most of the time, they're quiet like this. Now, if I open my hand, this little bunny is going to take off. But they're usually very calm and very quiet. And I think that's a good sign. From what I understand, and I've been doing a lot of reading about it, bunnies have two defense mechanisms. One is running, and they can run fast. But the other is to sort of freeze, and because of their coloring, they will blend into the surroundings. So if they just hunker down and stay very still, a predator might pass them right by. So these little guys are doing very well at the hunker down and stay very still bit. But of course, I want them to be able to run, and they can't do that here. So they absolutely have to be released before they get too much bigger, because they have to get used to running and jumping and doing all of those other things they'll have to do to stay safe out in the wild. And I'm still enjoying having them around. And yes, it's bad of me to keep them any longer than necessary, but I'm just so tempted. All right, we are going to take a quick break for the intro, and we will be right back. I know, you're so cute. So yesterday, we were talking about the need to move things out of our closets, when they are no longer working for us. And as a result of that video and reading your comments, which is always key, I thought we would start pulling this apart a little more. Because obviously, we all know that it's a good idea to scale back, get rid of things you don't need. If they're just taking up space, you should move them on one way or another. Sell them, turn them into cash, donate them, let somebody else have the use out of them. If they are so sad and shabby, they're not even good for a donation, then yeah, they need to go into the trash. But we all know this. What I wanted to look at is some of the reasons why it's so hard for us to let go. And that is a direct response to some of your comments. And we're going to start off with Dr. Cheryl, who had talked about the fact that she has a hard time letting things go. She wants to hold on to them just in case. I might want to wear that someday. And I think we all have some variation of that going for us. I might want to wear that. Hey, I paid good money for that. I used to love that. Maybe I'll love it again. If I just got the right skirt to go with that sweater, it would be so perfect. We've got a million excuses. And I think for people our age, and even for some of you a little younger than I am, I'm dead center in the baby boom. I was raised by people who lived through the Great Depression and then later the rationing of the Second World War. So yeah, you didn't throw things away in my house. And my mother, I can still remember my mother saying, there are starving children in Korea. Because remember, I came along in the 50s, so she could no longer say there are starving children in France or Germany, which is what her mother said to her. So she had to change it, went over to Korea. And I got no comfort from my father, because when he had been in the war, he was in London shortly after the Blitz. He was not there when London was being bombed, but he was there later, watching children playing in the rubble. So yeah, he was not going to be very supportive of getting rid of anything if it still had some utility in it, because he saw firsthand what was going on in Europe, what the privation was like for people who were experiencing the war on their own soil. So yeah, that's the story of my childhood. It's like, you have no idea how lucky you are. Take that and cherish it and count yourself blessed. Yeah. And a lot of us were raised with that same waste not, want not mentality. I was the oldest in my family, and it was a long time before there were even any other girls in my family. So I never dealt with what my brothers did in terms of hand-me-downs. There was nobody for me to get hand-me-downs from, and by the time the elder of my two sisters came along, anything I had long since been handed down to a cousin. But we did have that mentality. Now, I'm not criticizing, because this was a good thing. Our parents were thriftier. They were more frugal. The idea of the levels of debt that we are carrying as a society would appall them. Their idea of debt was they would have a mortgage and maybe they would have a car loan, and that was about the extent of it. The idea of taking a credit card out to do your clothes shopping, no, that was absurd. You don't buy the things you can't afford. That was not what their generation did. Now, even though we're dealing with some different rules, we've still got that mental programming that is coming from the previous generations. And even those who are younger than I am, not, the baby boom, but when we are looking at the next generations to come along, Gen X, in many cases, these young people, well, they're adults. They're not all that young anymore. They were raised by the earlier baby boomers who handed off that same batch of values that we got from our parents, because the world had not changed all that much by the time Gen X began to come along. It changed a lot as they began to go into adulthood, but the values of the 50s, 60s, 70s were very much the same. You go into the 80s with technology, and the values started to change rapidly. So, yeah, are we programmed by our parents not to want to throw things away? Yes, I think we are. Also, our own life experiences have taught us that you never know if you're going to need something. If nothing else, the pandemic of 2020 made pack rats and hoarders out of a lot of us. But I also think that there is a natural human tendency, regardless of any of the social pressures we may be feeling, a natural human tendency to say, I have this is my stuff, and not part with it lightly. And by that, I don't mean selfishness. I'm talking about shunning wastefulness rather than getting crazy acquisitive. That was for the 1980s. So, is it hard for us to part with things? Yeah, it is for me. As I said yesterday, I go into my closet, I look for 2 criteria. Is it in good condition? Does it fit? If it ticks off those 2 boxes, odds are it's going to stay. Now, I'm not even dealing with other normal considerations. Does it look good on me? Do I like that color? Have I worn it in the last 2 years? Etc., etc. And these are the factors we should be bringing into our equation, and not just the one we got from our parents. Is it in decent condition? Does it fit you? It's yours. But that's not like a marriage contract. You are not wedded to this item for life. So I think we need to start reevaluating our processes when we start to look at things. Remember, every item in your closet represents a slot for an item that could be in there if that particular coat hanger was empty. Now, again, I'm not saying, I mentioned this yesterday, I'm not saying take something out just so you can put something new in. Although some of us do that, that is how it works for some of us. And if that's what makes you happy and you're not plunging yourself into debt over it, then who am I to criticize you? Lord knows I do my fair share of that. I'm thinking, yes, okay, I just did that today. I moved 3 shirts out of my closet and promptly sat down on my computer and bought 3 sweaters. And I don't know, it's like, I don't know why. Well, yes, I do. The reason I bought them is these 3 sweaters were on sale. They were good deals, but that's my hot button. Is this a good quality item, and am I getting it at a good price? Oh yeah, sold. But I'm wondering if the impetus to buy these 3 new sweaters was not simply the fact that I had just removed 3 other items. So, I love the new sweaters, by the way. And when they come in, because I bought them online, when they come in, assuming they fit, I'm sure they will look good on me, because at least one of them, by the way, is a color that you folks picked out for my wardrobe. It's that dark blood red burgundy color. So yes, it's going to be great. It's going to fit right into my wardrobe. And I'm wondering, was this a knee-jerk reaction? Was this like Pavlov's dog? I emptied that coat hanger and ding, got to put something else on it. But nevertheless, even though I am embarrassed to say that I did fill those hangers immediately, I still have to feel like I'm ahead of the game, because I moved out 3 items that I am not wearing to bring in 3 items that I really like, that I know I am going to wear, or I hope I am going to wear. You never really know until they get into your closet. So I was looking at that whole issue, just globally. I didn't scale down. I did not. But I do feel like simply getting rid of some things that I don't like, that I know I don't like, and replacing it with some things that I do like, and I know I know I like them, I hope I'm going to continue to, was a step in the right direction. Probably a tiny little baby step, but a step nonetheless. And who knows, maybe next week something will go out of the closet and nothing will come back in to replace it. But that all depends on who's having sales. So I think there are things we need to ask ourselves when we are going through our closets, our dresser drawers, our kitchen cabinets even. Pick your poison. What is it you want to clear out? What is it you want to downsize, scale back? Your choice. For me, it's almost always my closet because that is, in fact, my weakness. Yes, I like buying clothes. I really do. So the questions we need to ask ourselves are, obviously, is it in good condition? Does it fit? Let's start with those. Those are basic, but it shouldn't stop there. Do you like it? Now, you all know I am not into that whole Marie Kondo thing. It's got to spark joy. Because if we only kept the things in our lives that spark joy, I don't think any of us would own a toilet plunger or a potato peeler. We have to have things in our lives that are not sparking joy, period. I don't know anyone who can get excited about a potato peeler. I don't even think Julia Child could get excited about a potato peeler, although I could be wrong about that. We don't have to look at what's in our closet and say, I love this. This makes me feel like Audrey Hepburn when I put it on. Or, in my case, Katharine Hepburn when I put it on. No, we don't have to be like so nutty, crazy for it that, we're ready to write it love letters. But do we need to like it? Now, a couple of weeks ago, we had another little experiment, and I was encouraging all of you to go through your closet and pull out the items you don't usually wear for whatever reason. The things that are stuck in the back, they're just not in your everyday rotation. In part, it's to reacclimate ourselves to the notion that this is in our closet, we own this, we can wear it. Do a little experimenting, see what it looks good with, see what we can do to change it if we have issues with whether or not we like it. And that was sort of step one in the process. Let's start to identify the items we are not wearing, the items that are not our first grabs. Because let's face it, you go into your closet, and if it's nothing but first grabs, oh, you get the gold star. Because that's not what happens to me in my closet. Even if I go in and say, oh, I like this very much, I may not wear it because it may not be grocery store appropriate. I have a gorgeous silk blouse in there. Love the daylights out of that. But am I wearing that to the vegetable aisle at Kroger? No, I am not. Just because I don't wear it every day doesn't mean I don't really, really like it. So that little grab the things that are not always your first picks is an exercise that has its limitations, because obviously a lot of the things we are grabbing on our day-to-day rotation in our wardrobe are not going to be our fancy pieces, our dressy pieces. They are probably not even going to be, that raggedy old flannel shirt we wear when we work in the garden either. But the raggedy old flannel shirt and the silk blouse each have their place. And I would never say to anyone, well, you don't grab that piece every day, so you need to get rid of it. No, because that's just not how real life works. We look at our daily activities, and that is probably going to be about 80% of the time we are spending. So, yeah, going to work, going to the store, dealing with household stuff, just the ordinary down and dirty of daily life. That's probably going to be the section of our wardrobe that is getting the first picks. It doesn't mean that everything else has to go. But as I say, it was a starting point. Identify the things you like, the things you are wearing. Maybe there's a reason something else in the back of your closet is not a first pick. I was able to identify a few pieces in my closet from that little exercise. And in my case, it was clothing that was, I don't want to say like crazy dressy, because yeah, the Queen is not inviting me to a gala at Balmoral anytime soon, mostly because she's dead. Even if she were alive, it still wouldn't be happening. So I look at that and think, oh, that's not the kind of clothing I'm talking about. It was just stuff that's a little bit dressier than usual. Things that I was not pulling out simply because that's a legacy of a style I used to wear when I was out working every day, and there was a certain percentage of business meetings and luncheons and whatever that I had to slightly, kick it up a notch for. Now, are these the same pieces that I was wearing back then? No, they are not. But they are pieces I subsequently bought because I was still trapped in that mindset. So it enabled me to isolate a few pieces that should probably be donated. They really should. So they are in my donation box. And the reason is that's just not my lifestyle anymore. They were not smart purchases. And I have to recognize that, deal with it, and move forward. Fortunately for me, I am such a bargain hunter that even when I find something that might not have been the smartest choice, it was never so ghastly expensive that I'm chewing my nails thinking, oh, I have to get rid of this, but it was so costly. No, they were not. And I look at it, and I strongly suggest that you adopt this mindset if you're not already there. I look at it as, I went out and got it. I'm not getting the use out of it that somebody else is, so I can be pleased that it is going to be a charitable contribution. Somebody who might not be able to afford this is going to get it. They're going to be able to use it. And I look at this and think, the last time I did a massive purge was when I retired. And I made sure I donated all of my clothing to women's shelters that were preparing women who came out of situations of domestic violence for the workforce. I gave the stuff to them. Those women had interview clothes. And maybe even, depending on how the program distributed things, maybe they might have had enough to get them through to their first paycheck. So, yeah, I can feel good about that. I don't have to look at this as I must be the one to get the use out of this piece. As long as somebody is getting the use out of this piece, hey, isn't that a win? So that was what I ended up pulling out of the little grab, your lesser worn pieces exercise. And that moved me on to the next step, which is where we are this weekend, which is let's take a look at the things you just plain don't like. Are there things in your wardrobe that you just flip past them every single time because you don't like them? Well, maybe it's about time to move them out, because the reality is, if you're just flipping past them every time, it means you don't need them. Because if you did need them, you would be pulling them out and wearing them. So if you don't need them, you don't like them, they're in your closet, and every single time, it's like swiping, like they do on those dating apps, just swiping in the wrong direction. That's about the time when we need to start bringing that dating app mindset to our closet and say, yeah, I have already rejected this guy 16 times. It's time I kicked him to the curb. And maybe that's an easier way to look at it. So I know, I'm not through with this yet, by the way. I got 3 items out of my closet. That's all. I am pretty sure I am going to be able to get at least 2 or 3 more out of my closet. And if that happens, hallelujah. But one of the restrictions I am putting on this is I am not allowing myself to consider the cost of the item. Oh, that's hard. That is really hard. Because, you know, my mother's sitting on my shoulder the whole time saying, waste not, want not. There are starving children in Korea. But that is something I am imposing on myself. When I go into my closet, and by the way, when I do this, get 2 or 3 items out, I'll leave it alone for a few days, maybe even a week, and then go back and look with fresh eyes. So the next time I go back in, which is probably going to be, I don't know, Tuesday or Wednesday, go through, I will not allow myself to look at the cost of the item. That's just off the table. Because that is one of my biggest stumbling blocks in terms of getting rid of something that isn't working for me. Part of it is I don't want to admit that I bought an expensive item, wasted the money, waste not, want not, my mother. I don't want to admit that. And then once it is in my wardrobe, I want to believe that I will eventually get the use out of it because it did represent something more of an investment. Now, keep in mind, because I am a bargain shopper, my idea of an investment is probably a long way away from most people's idea of an investment. But still, we all have our own scale of what was an expensive piece. And I tend to look at what is expensive relative to the average cost of an item in that category. If it's a sweater, you gotta know, I've got like average costs of all of my sweaters, the pullovers, the cardigans, and I could probably tell you right down to the penny exactly what the average cost is. And if something was above that, then yeah, I'm a little more reluctant to part with it. And I have to walk away from that because all that is doing to me is putting this whole new cloak around something I am keeping. And that is, I must keep it. Even though I don't really like it, I never wear it, I'm probably never going to wear it, but it cost money. And I'm giving it a get-out-of-jail-free card because I paid a little more for it. That just plain doesn't make sense. And as I say, what I do with my clothing, some people sell their clothing on the used clothing market. Again, starving children in Korea, I cannot bring myself to do that. If I have clothing, a very, very practical item, I'm going to donate it first because I don't want to charge someone for something that I know someone in need would like to have and probably couldn't afford. So that's just what works for me. On the other hand, if you can do that, you can walk away patting yourself on the back, feeling good about it, and go out and buy 3 new sweaters, because that's what I just did. But I have to get rid of that part of the mindset. And I know exactly where this comes from. It comes from my parents. My mother mostly, but, you know, I'm not going to pretend that my father, watching little British children who he never failed to remind me, they look just like you. They were little blonde-haired, blue-eyed children playing in rubble. That's what I saw. But because my parents had witnessed that level of privation, even if they themselves hadn't experienced it, oh, they passed that on to me. It is like this giant, hairy monkey that they shoved on my back and said, here, this is your new lifetime companion. So I have to fight my way out of that. And that is going to be my next little project. So when I go back into the closet, I will be looking at things, asking myself the hard questions, and not allowing myself. That is one answer I will not allow myself. When I say, why am I keeping this? Because I paid more for it. That's the answer I'm refusing to accept. If I don't have a better answer than that, or at least a different answer, that's going to have to go into the donation bin. There's no two ways around it. I have got to start breaking these patterns. Now, you would think I'd have broken all my bad patterns years ago. Either that or I'd be wallowing in a gutter somewhere, but I haven't. It can be very, very hard to pull yourself away from patterns you've lived with all your life, especially when these are patterns that get full reinforcement from society. Holding on to things that are useful and you paid money for them, and, it's like, oh, it's in good condition. It's not suitable to be cast aside yet. Society tells us this is a good thing. This is frugality. Frugality is good. This is conservative approaching your clothing. This is good. This is responsible. It's caring for the environment. It's not getting wrapped up in the easy come, easy go, fast fashion model. I agree with all those things. But still, if it's not working for me, and remember, it's not working for you either, then it's time for me to consider getting rid of it. Now, am I going to compel myself to get rid of everything that doesn't pass that sort of random little criteria test I just imposed on myself? No. Clothing by its very nature is about maybe 80% necessity, but a good 20% emotional comfort, aesthetic appeal, a desire to be beautiful, to have people look at you and say, oh, doesn't that look like a wonderfully dressed person? These are important considerations too. If we just wore clothing to keep our butts warm, we would all be running around in burlap sacks. That's simple. But we're not. There's more to it than that, and we have to recognize that. But within reason. For me, I have a goal. And that goal is to get my wardrobe down to something that is not just manageable, but where almost everything, I'm going to give myself about 5 or 10% of my closet, that almost everything is something in there that I can grab and put on any random day of the week and feel okay about. I want to be wearing the clothing in my closet. Now, yes, there is going to be some small percentage. I'm actually going to have to do the math to come up with that calculation. But there is going to be some small percentage that is not everyday wear clothing. I need to allow myself room for that. But for the most part, and I would say easily it's going to have to be about 90% that's in there. It's going to have to be things that are in my everyday rotation. If they're not, I'm going to have to figure out why, and I'm going to have to do something about it. So that is what I wanted to share with you today. Hopefully, this will help you look at your own failure to discard, move along, otherwise scale back And it doesn't just have to be your wardrobe. It can be the china collection in your cabinet. It can be the racks of canned food in your basement. Whatever. Whatever it is you need to trim back. Hopefully this will help you to look at it in a different light and get a little motivated to tackle those challenges. As always, I want to hear from you. What are your struggles? What is it in your closet that makes you say, no, it's not working for me, but I just can't get rid of it? What is it? Because mine is, I can tell you right now, my mother on my shoulder, you paid too much money for that to just toss it. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing yours. Also, as always, if you have strategies you have used to persuade yourself to do the things you need to do, because I play mind games on myself all the time. I will get myself little rewards. I will talk myself into things. I will reframe things. Believe me, I live to trick myself because it does make it easier. If you have strategies like that, please do share in the comments. All right, we are going to take a look at a slideshow on the way out. I hope to see you all next time. And in the meanwhile, have a terrific day.